Welcome to the Ivory Coast. I'm Roy Jacobs, here along with
Jackson Finseth.
And Evan Perilla.
The country we will be educating you on today is the Ivory Coast.
Otherwise known as Côte d'Ivoire, which is the real French name.
Let's start off in Unit 1, where we'll be exploring the geographic composition of our country.
The Ivory Coast is in the West African culture region and borders Burkina Faso, Ghana, Guinea, and Mali.
The Ivory Coast flag looks a little something like this.
One of the main environmental challenges is deforestation, which is caused by excessive agriculture in the region. In response, the Ivory Coast is trying to join the REDD+, which is an organization that combats deforestation.
Unit 2 to understand the Ivory Coast's economic and industrial development patterns.
The HDI is an index that measures the average achievements in life expectancy, education, and having a decent standard of living.
Knowing this information, the Ivory Coast has an HDI score of 0.264, which is ranked 166th in the world.
The GDP per capita measures how much product is made on average within a general area. The GDP per capita in the Ivory Coast is 3.68 thousand, which is below average within the world.
GNI per capita measures the amount of money on average in an area. The GNI per capita is $6,224.
The income distribution of our country is 35.3.
Fertility rate measures how many births per 1,000 women within a country. The Ivory Coast has a fertility rate of 4.3.
The literacy rate of the Ivory Coast is 50%, which is how many people in the country can read and write.
The Gender Inequality Index is 0.589, which is ranked 156 out of 166 countries with data.
The Ivory Coast is a periphery country in Wallerstein's world systems theory, which categorizes countries into core, semi-periphery, and periphery. Unit 3 is all about the population and migration patterns of the Ivory Coast.
The population size is something that measures how many people live in a country, and the Ivory Coast is 29,981,758.
Total fertility rate measures the average number of children a woman would have over her lifetime, based on current age, with an average of 3.4 in the Ivory Coast.
Crude death rate is a measure of the number of deaths per 1,000 people in a population during a specific time period. Typically, a year in the Ivory Coast is 8 per 1,000.
Infant mortality rate is the number of deaths of infants under 1 year old per 1,000 live births, which is 53 per 1,000 in the Ivory Coast.
Its population period looks like this, showing a youth dependency.
The Ivory Coast is in stage 2 of the demographic transition model.
One of the main migration problems is net outmigration. Not many people are migrating to the Ivory Coast while people are moving out. Unit 4 covers the Ivory Coast's cultural patterns and processes.
There are more than 60 ethnic groups, the main ones being Akanin in the west, Mandaean in the east, Voltaic in the north, and Kru in the southeast.
Known popular art from the Ivory Coast is their passion for music. A popular genre is the coup de cow, which is fast-paced traditional dancing. It's about happiness and expressing daily life while also giving insight into the political situation of the country.
The official language is French, while Dioula and Baolo are widely spoken.
One of the endangered languages is Gwebi, which is a branch of the Kru language.
The religious composition of the Ivory Coast is broken up into 12% Christian, 25% Muslim, and 63% with ethnic and traditional beliefs.
The cultural landscape of our region includes coastal lagoons and dense tropical forests in the south, while in the northwest features high mountain peaks.
One significant cultural and religious landmark is the Basilica of Our Lady of Peace, a symbol of national devotion and heritage.
This religious building reflects the nation's devotion to their deep and rich history.
Both the women and men wear the same clothing, which is called the bubus.
The main food for the culture is ground cassava, which is also used for tapioca.
Welcome to Unit 5. This is where we will be exploring the political patterns and processes of the Ivory Coast.
The Ivory Coast is a multinational state.
The age of our country is fairly new, as it was a result of the groundbreaking Berlin Conference, where the French lost their power of the region and they were granted autonomy.
The Ivory Coast was a former colony of France.
They are still controlled to a certain degree, which is neocolonialism, which is when a higher power has control over the goods and influence within the country.
This does relate to our country, as France still has a high amount of influence over the agricultural goods and the people.
Also, the music industry in the north is made up of local bands, which play the drums and the balafon.
In Unit 6, we will be talking about the agriculture and rural land use patterns and processes. In some regions of the Ivory Coast, there are savanna regions in the north, as it is close to the Sahara, while the south bordering the ocean is a tropical region where majority of the crops are grown. 84.16% of the country is devoted to agricultural use, which explains the main export, which is their crops. Around 70% of the population works in the fields, which reveals how our country is a big exporter and producer in the agribusiness. 45.23% of the labor workers in the Ivory Coast are dedicated to farming. Our country's main crop, which they specialize in, is raw cacao, which is the main export, but they are also big producers in cashews and cotton. Now moving on to our final unit, Unit 7, where we will traverse through the cities and urban land use of our country. Our country follows the rank size rule, as each city's population decreases by about half as the cities get smaller. The largest city in the Ivory Coast is Abidjan, in which it is the economic capital of the Ivory Coast. The commercial and industrial zones are located on the coast, in which the urban model that best fits this is the concentric zone model. Sustaining the infrastructure is the main problem of urban sustainability in the Ivory Coast, as their infrastructure is dangerous and acts as a centrifugal force. This leads into the major city struggles where the poor infrastructure easily takes the cake. A lack of resources going towards maintaining this hurts the country, and it is a key factor to the poor living conditions.